So hi, my name is Elmer, and I'm the co-founder of Surety. So today we'll be having the event on menopause at work with together with Julie, and just to share a little bit about our initiatives. So we'll be having the menopause festival on 9th of November, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So we will actually be holding it on at the National Gallery Singapore. We just actually confirmed our venue a couple of days ago, so really excited to be able to share that here today. So I think one thing is also you'll be able to get to know on multiple topics about what menopause is really like, or rather what midlife is really like for women. So we'll be exploring on topics like menopause care, menopause at work, as well as holistic wellness for midlife women. So you can expect, of course, contents, information from our esteemed speakers, Dr. Tan, for instance, who is a medical director at ONG, the women's specialist, as well as, of course, TCM with physician Eileen Chua, and of course, our dear HR advisor here today with us, Julie. So yeah, really looking at really curated contents and panels for you guys to really learn more about what menopause is really like and how do we actually manage as a community. So yeah, we actually are running our early bird discount at 50% off currently. So feel free to scan the QR code and sign up for the event. I think it will be a pretty exciting event. We are having also tea as well as lunch catered during the day itself, and hope to see you guys there. Right, so I think without further ado, let me just introduce Julie. Julie is, of course, our dear HR advisor at Surety, and she's also a fractional chief HR officer. So Julie is really a seasoned HR professional with over 30 years of experience in human capital management, having worked with multinational corporations, big four firms, and startups. So she really has a proven ability to effectively partner with businesses on people strategies, and now she dedicates experience as a fractional CHRO as well as a HR consultant to help companies scale and transform. And today we are here to learn more about her experience in navigating menopause, her experiences navigating menopause in the workplace, right? And also learning more about how we can better effectively look at policies as well as relationships in the workplace when we talk about midlife and menopause for women, right? So without further ado, let me welcome Julie. Hi,
Thank you.
Julie.
Hi, Alma. Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to share my experience with you and to share my story on navigating perimenopause and menopause at work.
Yeah, great. So, Julie, maybe you could share more about maybe your experience with menopause, right? Like how did you perhaps come to find out more about Surety, right? And how did that link up to maybe the event here that we have today?
Okay, it's an interesting one. So I met Valerie through the Remarkable Women in Tech and Business Network. She showed up in the chat group on WhatsApp, and she introduced herself as a founder of Surety, a startup that supports women going through perimenopause and menopause. And I thought, oh wow, this is very interesting, because I did not have a good experience going through perimenopause. And I thought, okay, let me just check this out. What does her startup do? We arranged to meet, and when we finally met, I was so surprised to see a young lady because I did not expect to see a young lady. And it was very interesting. We share, our story. She shared her story of how she started Surety with Alma and her experience of her mom going through the whole process, while I shared mine. It wasn't a good one. It was actually quite painful for me, the perimenopause part. And now I'm going through menopause, which at this moment I find that I can cope better. But working in the corporate world and being a woman in the leadership role previously, it was tougher. So one thing led to another. She decided to seek my input on certain things, and then she brought Elmer along, and we had a chat about, some of my thoughts about supporting women at work. And then one thing led to another, and the next thing was they asked me, Julie, would you like to be our HR advisor? And I thought, okay, let me think about it. And then the next thing was I decided that, yeah, why not? Since this is something that is close to my heart. And of course, one of the things was about the mental wellness part that I went through. And I felt that, okay, I think maybe we should really talk about it. And at the same time, the world is aging. So at first, when I did the research about aging population, and I learned that it's not just in Singapore. I spoke to friends who are working in Europe, in Germany, in London, even in the US and Australia. And I've heard from HR professionals as well that ageism is a real problem, and the world is really aging. And with our aging population and with the rise of technology as well, I'm just thinking, how do we better support ourselves? And also, the big question that I asked in an open forum at the Singapore Leadership Network was, that was at the beginning of the year, I actually asked this question: how might we build a sustainable workforce in the face of an aging population? I know the government is doing a lot in this space, and raising the retirement age is one of the ways, and putting it into the policy. Certainly, the Ministry of Manpower has a policy now that talks about retirement and re-employment. And this is really targeting at a lot of the employers as well. So I thought, okay, so with that national agenda in mind, and for me personally, I've experienced this, and I've experienced ageism as well. I got laid off last year, and finding a work has not been that smooth. And I felt that, okay, so these two things are really close to my heart. And I decided that, okay, Elmer, Valerie, yes, I will agree. I agree to be your HR advisor and work with you.
Right. Thank you so much also for joining us in this journey. I think Julie is right that I think it's quite unexpected that I think two young people are doing this. I think that is also attributes to some of the initial apprehension that some of our partners have. Right. I think also it's a good icebreaker. I think also when we engage with our partners. So maybe thinking back to the conversation we had then, Julie, I think you shared a lot about your own personal experience navigating, I think the symptoms in the workplace, right? Could you share more about maybe some of the symptoms that you faced, especially especially during when you were actually having a 9 to 5?
Okay. When I went through perimenopause, I was still gainfully employed, and this was like 2 employments ago. It was in one of the big 4 firms, and some of you, if you check out my LinkedIn profile, you would have guessed which one it was. And being a woman in a leadership role, and also being the sole breadwinner at home, going through perimenopause was just pretty stressful to me. And I'm having to cope with the hormonal changes and balancing that with the heavy responsibilities, as you can imagine. So the physical and the emotional burden affected my level of confidence and also the perceptions of competence at work. So some of the symptoms that had the impact on my work were things like insomnia. So I could not sleep. I would go to bed at 11, and then I would wake up like at 2 a.m. and I would not be able to get back to sleep until like 5 a.m. in the morning. And I get these bouts of headaches and migraines, neck aches and upper body aches as well. Occasionally, I was still menstruating. So it was going through perimenopause. I had this brain fog. But the brain fog was not as bad as this time. It was the headaches, it was the inability to sleep, and the mood swings. Oh my God, that part was really, really bad. And I didn't know, what was going on. I thought it was just stress at work. And then there were anxiety, right? So that's the part where I don't know why sometimes I feel very emotional about certain things, and I feel very strongly about certain words or certain statements that were said and spoken. And I think last but not least was my eczema flare-ups. So the eczema was quite bad as well. How did it impacted my work? Because could not sleep properly. I have all these bouts of headache. It makes it very hard for me to concentrate at work. And I was frustrated trying to get a point across. And I didn't know it was called brain fog at that time, right? And then suddenly I lose this train of thought. And then another part was because there's bouts of headache, I couldn't hear very well. And to actively listen in my role as an HR leader, and also in doing recruitment as well, that it takes a lot of energy to actively listen during interviews, especially. And I was also absent-minded here and there as well. So the productivity and the speed that I used to be able to operate in were affected, and making decisions became more challenging. Yeah, it became a little bit more challenging. I think the mood swings was the other part. So there was a comment that were made, and I think these mood swings were felt more at home. At work, nobody really said anything about the changes. All they know was I'm always dealing with sleepless nights, and I was always dealing with headaches. But it was at home that my family were the ones that actually noticed that my behavior has changed. I've become a little bit more sensitive, easily irritated, and negative as well. And I just find it hard to see possibility. So that also affected my confidence at work. I didn't even realize that it was, the imposter syndrome kind of a feeling has crept in, and I wasn't even aware of it until my husband felt that, darling, you have changed, was what he said to me. And then the kids also said, Mom, why are you so sensitive, right? So I was not in, I think I felt I was still very stressed at work. And that was it. I didn't think it has anything to do with hormonal changes. So they were the ones. Actually, my husband tried to get me to go see a doctor, and I thought it's just headache. It's okay. It's just stressed. So he had to contact a common female friend, and she was his friend more than my friend, and ask her to speak to me and get me out for lunch. So when she contacted me out of the blue one day, and she said, Julie, how are you doing? Let's have lunch. And I'm like, okay. And in my heart, I was like, okay, you don't normally ask me out for lunch or even coffee. And I decided, all right, let's do this. And we had a chat about what I was going through. And she was quite open to share that, your husband asked me to reach out to you and just to have a chat with you on what's going on. And she has gone through menopause. She's already menopause. So she was the one who enlightened me about some of those things and encouraged me to go see a gynae. So after talking to her, I came home, and then my husband was like saying, so did you have a chat? How did it go? And then I was like, yeah, it went well, And then he said, so are you going to see the gynae? And I was like, yeah, okay, but I was like still putting it off and putting everything else, what mattered, on hold. It was only much later on that my kids and my husband decided to really kick my ass, and I'm sorry for the word. And I finally decided, okay, I'll make the appointment, I'll go, So I went. The bouts of headache, it started with the bouts of headache first. I went to see my GP, and my GP didn't really ask, whether it was menopause until I went back to him. So I got my hearing checked as well. So because of the headaches and all, it affected my hearing. I wasn't even aware of that. And then we talk about, going through menopause and all that. Then he was the one who said, okay, you really need to see a gynae, let's get you referred to a gynae, because my own gynae was very old when my children were born. And I think by now he would have moved on. Probably not here anymore. So I went to see the gynae. I got it tested, and true enough, there were some readings that were very abnormal. Hormones was still at a very good level, but it was just bizarre, some of the readings, and don't ask me because I wouldn't know what those things are. But one thing for sure, the gynae told me, yes, you are going through perimenopause, and that explains all these things that you are going through and experiencing. Yeah, and I was like, okay. Then I asked her, so what can you do to help me? Because there's all these people who are upset at home. COVID year was really bad. People are upset at home, and I went back to the gynae again. Is there something that you could give me or help me with, right? And then her advice was, so at the time she was saying, okay, why don't you take, do you want, she actually asked me, do you want to do HRT, the hormonal replacement therapy? And because she told me about the risk of cancer and everything else, and of course not, right? So certainly, I just said no. I don't want that. And what else can you give me? And then she said, okay, then there's nothing else. And she actually said, tell your husband and your children to endure. That was what they say. Tell them to endure. And I was very appalled at what she said. And I said, okay, did you tell your husband and your children to endure too when you go through it? And she said, yeah. And husband is a gynae too. So maybe they could understand from that point of view. But in my family, I just felt that things were going downhill. And I said, oh dear, if I tell them to endure, maybe this whole marriage will break down. Yeah. And that was, I was in my late 40s at that time. So yeah, Elmer, it was a hard time.
Right, definitely. I think you covered quite a fair bit of topics there as well. I think it's very important that we receive community support. I think support from not just our family, but also people in our workplace as well. I think when it comes to menopausal symptoms, which is why I think a lot of times when some of our community members come to me and Valerie, they always highlight this very key thing. People don't seem to understand what menopause really is, especially what women are going through when they go through this phase of life. I think it's very important for not just women to understand this, but also men as well, right? Because especially when you're supporting your spouse, right, as a guy, and also perhaps for the younger audience, you're supporting your mother as well, right? So I think your family has been very, very supportive. I think you mentioned how they have kicked your ass to for you to go see a doctor.
Yeah.
I think it's also very important that you seek medical help, especially if you feel that it's really affecting your quality of life and relationships. Yeah, I think if you guys have participated in our previous event with Dr. June, I think she covered a fair bit about the importance of seeking menopause care in Singapore. So your first line of defense will always be your family medicine doctors. But also, I think in certain cases, we also realize that sometimes some of these doctors are not really well versed with, I would say, female medicine. Right, I think they don't really understand maybe they understand general medicine very well, but perhaps when you go into specifics of like menopause, I think they might be a little bit less equipped to perhaps do so, which is why a lot of times we see women being transferred or referred to the gynecologist instead. Yeah, so maybe moving back to the career topic, I think we talked a lot about family support, but what about conversations regarding perhaps your symptoms in the workplace, especially in such a male-dominated environment, right? Was it awkward? How did you manage to navigate conversations around that?
Okay, so that's an interesting question, and I think it's very relevant because I didn't tell anyone. So I felt it was embarrassing. I felt it was just maybe my personal issue. I did not have a community to support me. I did confide in one lady, but her symptoms and my symptoms were very different. My symptoms were just, all over the place. But I did ask her, did I behave very badly at work? And she said, no, it's just at home. So I don't know why. That was why I keep thinking that maybe it was just work stress. I didn't think it was menopause. But my female colleague actually told me that maybe you're just burnt out. So there's this fine line. I could not really see what it was. Is it stress? Is it burnout? Or is it perimenopause? But because my family said that your work stress, your work hours is still the same, but your ability to cope seems to have dwindled. So that was the part where, they keep talking to me and I decided to see a doctor. So it was very hard. I did not speak to my male bosses, 2 employments away. And the last employment also, I didn't speak to any male bosses. But I did confide in one other female colleague. So how I cope was I really cope alone. I didn't tell the bosses. Some of my female colleagues, because I'm in the leadership position, so I have my team. So the times when I could not sleep properly, and days where I just felt that I'm just a bit slower, how I manage it is I would tell my team members to take notes, right, and to bear with me, to be a bit more understanding, to bear with me because I'm going through some changes in my body. So a few male subordinates, I felt that I trusted them. I could let them know, maybe I'm going through this stage. And then, they were very kind. The women and the men, of course, they were my subordinates, and they were very kind. They were saying that, yeah, we saw our mom go through it, so it's okay, Julie, don't worry, we'll be here to support you. So that helped. And this was all subordinates, my team members, because we're working in a startup, this is my last employment now. But as for my male colleagues, maybe 1 or 2 closer ones would just say that, I'm just going through some changes in my body. And they seem to know, and they would seem to be able to pick that up. So they were a lot more kinder, but it was not like a support group. None of that. It was none of that. It was more about having people who knows that you need a little bit more support and go through this. There were days where I slept in because I just could not sleep, like for 4 hours. I wake up in the morning, I just couldn't sleep. So I had to sleep in, and I would just text them and say that, okay, I'm going to be coming in late. But on mornings where I cannot get out of a certain meeting, like for example, interviews, you just cannot miss. So I just have to bite the bullet and just show up. Yeah. So I just show up, and I know I'm going to have headaches, so I take painkillers. So on those days where I have full days and I need to be in top form, I did not hesitate to take medication, and that's painkillers. I don't take it like throughout the day. I don't overdose. I don't overly rely on it. I only take it when I needed to, and that was also at the advice of my GP as well. And my GP, he knows a little bit about perimenopause, and he also advised me to take some supplements that contain black cohosh or isoflavones, which I did. I took his advice and I bought those, and I said, can you help me to sleep at night? So he said, what, you want sleeping pills? And I'm like, no. Is there something else that is better? How about melatonin, right? So surprisingly, melatonin did not work for me. So I took something else called valerian root, and amazingly, that one works for me. It works a lot better. Yeah. So that was how I cope at work, and then it hits you sporadically throughout the day, every now and then. So one time I was feeling very good, very high, and super productive, and I got a lot of things done. Then by afternoon, the energy sort of dropped, and then it's like, oh, the headache is coming back. What I do is I drink coffee. I drink coffee and I ate dark chocolate. So for some amazing reasons, those 2 things perk me up. It's better than taking painkillers. If I can avoid it, I avoid it. And then so I think the flexible hours and the ability to work from home were some of the things that helped me cope. And of course, in the company that I was in previously, I allow people to work from home. There's this flexibility there that allows us to just be able to function much better. Does that answer your question, Elmer?
Yeah, it does. I think you also coincidentally answered Doreen's question as well. I think she was curious to know what you did to manage after the gynae asked your family to endure, and also how you didn't want to take HRT.
Yeah,
So I think you mentioned a couple of supplements as well as
yeah,
medications you were taking, right?
yes.
And I know you're also an avid fan of physical activity as well.
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah. So let me just so those were my perimenopausal days and how I cope with it. Let me jump to exercising. So when I was working in the startup, 2021 up to July last year, I was studying a part-time master's degree and working in a startup. How crazy is that? So you can imagine the sleepless night, what I did, right? I work or I study or I do my assignment. Very, very productive. But after I got laid off, I decided to get back into and really, really practice yoga properly. I finished my master's degree in 2022. And then suddenly I felt that, oh, I've got a lot of time on my hands. And my daughter said, you are at an age where your physical body cannot do HIIT workout anymore, which is a high intensity interval workout. You can't do that anymore. Why don't you try something else, something like that, like yoga? And you need new friends was what she said. You need social life, outside of school and work. And I said, okay, so I took her advice. I practiced yoga, but I did not practice the meditation part and the mindfulness part of yoga until after I got laid off. It's like it's a complete new thing, so I went into it because I felt that it was a much needed respite as well. So a few things I did. So yoga is one. The other thing I did, which I did not expect myself to do, because to me it was also like a bit taboo. I went to seek professional counseling. I saw a therapist, I saw a psychologist, in fact, psychologist, psychiatrist, I can't remember one of those. And it was only then that I realized how burnout I was at work. And it's like outside of work, there is no identity. There was like my full identity was just work related. Every time when people ask, you truly introduce yourself, the first thing that come out of my mouth is my work. I would not be talking about anything about outside of work. Like I'm a mother of two, I've got two cats and all that. I wouldn't say any of those things. I realized there was an issue there. And at the same time, I also told the therapist what I was going through, the mood swings and everything else. And things at home were much better. I have a very, very supportive family. They were very, very patient with me. And I was impatient with myself. And I get disappointed whenever, we had a quarrel or a disagreement because of how I reacted and I overreacted. Yeah. So the therapist was good, and he's a certified psychologist as well. So he gave me antidepressants, and I was hesitant to take at first. And I can even tell you the name. There were two. One is Lexapro. The other one is I think it's Clonotril. Yeah, Clonotril. So those were the things that helped me manage and really calm me down. So those were the things that I took. And for sleep at night, I continued to take the valerian root, and I continued to take the black cohosh. So those were the things that I took for a period of time. So Clonotril and Lexapro, I took it for about 3 months, and then I stopped. And I only rely on the rest. And I took yoga classes. I did some strength training, and I really, really practiced meditation and mindfulness. So all these things helped me cope much better. And then guess what? After July, I stopped menstruating. And I realized, oh, am I going to the real menopause now? And then I thought, yeah, maybe I am, but because I was out of job, still searching for a job and not be able to find a job due to, I really half suspected it's due to ageism. But anyway, yeah, so not working helps. Not working helps because I did not realize how much of a break I needed for myself until, I got laid off. So it's almost like the universe telling me, Julie, time to take a break. So I took a break. Was still looking for a job, but not putting a lot of expectations on it until this year. Then I started my own business. I repivot myself since I've got nothing to lose, since I got nothing to begin with. So I just repivoted. I went into a fractional role and I got my first client, and slowly things were much better. I'm much more able to cope today, and I think if I have gone through menopause, if I'm working in a corporate role, how would I have handled it? I ask myself, would I have handled it the way that I can now because I have so much flexibility? Yeah, and I think if I do get a job again, I would not hesitate. I would not hesitate to actually talk about it. Yeah, I think for me to sit before you right now to share my story, it's a little bit of me coming out and finding the courage to share my story, because I believe that there are other women out there. You may not be a woman in a corporate role or even a leadership role, but I want to just say that whatever you're going through, you're not alone, because there's a lot of other women who are going through it as well. And for me, I came from a place that I didn't know. Then I learned about it. And then I felt that there is a real need to support women going through this, especially with aging population.
Right. That's amazing. I'm honestly very, very glad that everything worked out. I think it's quite tough for especially especially a woman going through these life changes. I think you spoke about like how ageism was a thing, especially in job hunting. I think especially for women in the corporate world, I think you have significant life stages as well. I think especially for parents, right? You have your perhaps your entry phase. Then you go into maybe looking at becoming a mother. Then after you become a mother, a couple of years later, you are exploring midlife already. So things are moving at extremely fast pace. You need to know so many things over a couple of years, right? And there are so many changes in your life that really makes things all the more hectic. Yeah, so definitely echo your sentiment about how women really need support. I think not just from family, but also in their workplaces as well.
Yeah.
I think you spoke about how flexibility really helped you in your journey through perimenopause. I think definitely the time, the available time to really explore maybe to learn more about perimenopause and menopause. I think exploring different treatment options that work for you. I think that was very important as well. So how do you think perhaps companies can create a more supportive environment, maybe through policies that support women in their midlife?
So I found that the flexible work arrangements, it's one of the things that is a low-hanging fruit that can be immediately implemented to support women going through perimenopause and menopause. The flexi hours, not having a fixed time to start and end, that is the other one, because flexible work arrangements comes in different shapes and forms. So having that flexi hours, or even having a compressed work hours for the week, helps. And certainly work from home helps, because sometimes you could get certain anxiety attacks, or even the fatigue that just hit you. I don't know about the women here, but for me, just recently, in the last 2 months, I found that after food, I go into this, fatigue. It's like I don't know what happened. It's like my body has to work extra hard to digest the meals that I just ate, and it happened for 3 meals a day. So yeah, you go into this fatigue, and I find that I cannot function immediately after a meal. So one of the things is to take a short nap. So when I was doing that, I took a nap for about just a short eye of that short 10-15 minutes of cat nap, or power nap as you call it. It really helps. Yeah, I could just bounce back, and I could function again. And of course, if the headache hits me, and I need to have a meeting again, I would take a painkiller. Otherwise, I would try to massage my scalp on my own. So policies, flexible work arrangement is something that could immediately be rolled out to support women who is going through this. You cannot underestimate the insomnia that, women go through, and of course the physical fatigue as well. I think the other one, very important, is the support at work, because like I was uncomfortable talking openly about it until I found the courage to do so. And I believe that the mental wellness programs, health and mental wellness programs, are things that could be put in place. Like maybe specific health medical benefits is the other one that supports menopause treatment, like HRT perhaps, or even the mental wellness part. If there are specific medical programs that could allow employees to go for counseling because they don't have an outlet, they don't have a community perhaps, and they needed to speak to someone. So I think the employee assistance programs helps as an avenue for them to talk about it. And the mental wellness part, definitely. And if there's medication like antidepressants, because I recall, in one of the sessions, I asked Dr. June, because of what my therapist said, I was going through that. And my therapist actually said that a number of women going through menopause or perimenopause were his patients. And they didn't take HRT. They took the antidepressants that was prescribed, and they actually felt better. So I asked the question, right, will we be over-reliant on it? Actually, the answer is no. I've gone off. I have not taken Lexapro and Clonazepam for a long time. In fact, for more than 8 months already. And I'm coping quite well. Do I think I need it? Not really, Maybe if I really cannot cope, I'll probably go back again. But otherwise, I can. So the employee assistance programs, the health mental wellness programs will be good. I think DEI practices, slowly putting it in place would be good. So we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusivity. I think we know what diversity is. We know what inclusivity is. But equity is the part. Equity is the part which I think not a lot of people understood what equity meant at work. Equity is not everybody gets the same. Equity is really about how do we support somebody along the journey in the workplace. So, for example, when you see somebody who is a top performer, and for me personally, I know myself, I'm a high achiever, and for the performance to suddenly dip a little bit, to slow down, to when somebody have difficulty in making decisions, and you see certain challenges that they face. So the equity piece is about having that supportive environment among colleagues, and how do you help them along? Is the active reach out, helping them and just reaching out to find out, are you okay? And then slowly, maybe the person will open up about sharing what they are really going through. Studies have shown, right? There's a recent survey studies that show that 75% of people in the workforce are very comfortable talking about work. So they will not hesitate to ask for help at work. But when it comes to their health and their mental well-being, you'll find that 45%, 50% of them are not comfortable sharing. So when I say we create that supportive environment, it's really making it a safe place for people to talk. So what I'm saying is, perhaps it's about redefining work culture, redefining it to the part where it is redefining it to the part where when you connect at work, it is not just about work. How some millennials and Gen Z has taught us at the workplace. So I'm a Gen X. Okay, I'm 53. I'll be very open about my age. I'm 53. So we have learned a little bit from some of the younger millennials and the Gen Z they like the workplace to not just be about work, but to be a social environment as well. And that's how you can connect. And I find that it's one of those things that we Gen Z can learn from them, because they are very community based. And I think one of the things after I left the corporate world and I come out, pivot myself as a solopreneur, and I met so many younger people, men and women, and I found that they could just form communities so easily and able to support one another. And they could just talk about anything, anything. And I find that that is something that is lacking in the corporate world today. So if we can redefine work culture, right, creating interest group, educating people about mental health, that will be very, very gender neutral, right? And then educating people, and I think this all has to also do with the company's demographics in terms of the aging population and women in particular. Unless you really have substantial data, otherwise, it'll probably be put at the back burner. So I think when you approach it with a interest group, different interest group, maybe a group for women, maybe women are better, are more open to talk about it, and educating people, about perimenopause and menopause could help with the empathy part, right, and creating a more supportive work environment. I think slowly, when this become a little bit more, you push the boundary a bit by bit more, then you make resources about specialized menopause support. So not just in the healthcare and the mental wellness benefits, but making those resources easily available. And I think if I were to get a corporate job again, if I can champion this is what I'll do. And I'll even, gather a group of women in a mature group, like above 40s and all, and we'll probably have a coffee and have a chat. Right? If we can find people among us who have already gone through it and thrive, and I would, of course, volunteer myself as well, we will even be that mentor or even a coach to help them through navigate in the workplace.
Definitely. I think that would be something very, very popular. I think especially amongst female employees who are going through this stage of life. And I think it's definitely very, very important to have open conversations about menopause. I think you mentioned about how it was quite awkward for you to talk about menopause probably to your male colleagues, right? I think maybe just to share my experience starting out with Surety, I think it was also very awkward for me to talk about menopause to women as well, right? Imagine a guy like 26 years old, right, coming up to you and talking about, hey, how old are you? What's your experience in menopause like? I think the conversation is very, very awkward. I remember in the early days of Surety, me and Valerie actually went to Orchard Road to do street interviews, right? So we would identify women who looked around their age range and ask them, hey, what do you know about menopause, right? And if I were to approach them alone, right, I would look very suspicious. I think that was what some of the ladies actually feedback to me, like, oh, when you came up to me and suddenly talk about menopause, I was so shocked. It's not something that a lot of guys will talk about. Yeah, so it's probably also important to consider that just as much as you are also awkward, talking to guys about menopause or a midlife, I think the guy is also quite awkward, in talking about, afraid of infringing on your privacy, right? Especially for such an intimate topic. Yeah, so I think ladies, I think it's important to also consider that guys are also kind of curious about how they can help or enable you to perform better, right? But I think someone definitely has to take the first step. I think it can be either ways. I think it can be you, ladies, or I think also when as guys learn more about menopause, I think we definitely can also take the first step in engaging or pioneering this conversation. I think one thing I also like to share is also during our menopause festival, we also have another male ally champion for menopause. His name is Peter Sharon, and as you might have already guessed, he's the husband of Dr. Jun Sharon. Yeah, so he'll be actually speaking on the experience leading women groups at Goldman Sachs. So really looking at how to enable women to work better, and also enable women to perform better, and how corporate communities, especially like what Julie has just mentioned, corporate communities, whether formal or informal, can really help women navigate this part of their life. Yeah, so definitely take a look out for that. I think that is something a very interesting perspective to consider as well. Yeah. So I think on the next thing is I think we have considered more on the employee side of things, right? So we have considered how it really affects employees as well. Perhaps we could maybe delve a little bit further for businesses. Maybe there are a couple of business owners out there who are probably more interested to learn more about how perhaps this can impact their businesses, right? So maybe you could share a little bit more about perhaps how a menopause-friendly workplace would be great, I think, for employee morale or retention, maybe as a perspective of employee as well.
Sure. So I think one of the things I would say is when you have policies that actually help to look into this segment of needs for women who are menopausing, one of the things is where I'm just going to say this. So I mentioned about DEI. So the DEI part, it covers very wide spectrum of your employee workforce. So it is not just the different generations, but within the generation itself, there's the gender needs, there's the different of the diversity needs. So when you have something like that for mental health, for menopause as well, you actually have the ability to strengthen your employee value proposition in your ability to attract and retain talent, because you have something that's unique, right? And you actually showcase yourself as a business that values DEI, the different diversity of generations, and it goes beyond gender. It goes beyond racial ethnicity as well. So the employee value proposition is one area. And then the other part is about when you can showcase your ability to provide something for each segment of your employee population, right? You actually enhance your brand. They will see that you are an employer that truly values diversity, equity, and inclusivity, because you have something that supports the employees at a different stage of their life, at a different segment of their life cycle as well. And the other pieces would be, how this then align with your business suppliers or even customers for that matter. If you find that your customers do the same, I think there's a very strong alignment of values there as well. And that is another way to strengthen that working relationship, because you actually share the same values and you have an allies with you in your business journey of growth. And similarly, you could do the same with your suppliers as well. Yeah, and I think one other point that I would make too is to the point about Elma's point when you said about a male colleague. And I think as you embark on educating people in the workplace, it would be good to not just assign women mentors and coaches. That would be great. But if you can find male colleague allies, especially if the percentage of male employees in the company is stronger, like for example tech companies, definitely male employees are more than women. And if you can find male colleague allies, that would be great, because this is like, being really showcasing your diversity there as well, and finding the support for women. And DEI is also a very good thing to leverage on for your sustainability. And we know that in the SDG, sustainability development, as defined by the United Nations, there's a big portion on social impact. So when you ride on this, when you leverage on this as your EVP and you actually practice it, actively doing it, you are crafting out a very unique employee value proposition for yourself. And that in turn strengthens your employer brand.
Yeah, so maybe before we close off the session, I think we are already at 8:05. Maybe if there are any probably advice that you have to women out there as a closing statement on how they can perhaps better navigate menopause in the workplace.
My advice would be don't think that you are going through it alone, because you're not. And if you can find someone that you trust and just, put your question and just ask. And I think most importantly is to seek help. Ask for help and ask for support. And don't be afraid to do that. You are a valued employee and you want to do well at work. And when you can open up a little bit and share with your bosses, the hiring managers who get you into work, they have the responsibility to support you so that you can continue to be successful at work. So there is this vested interest on both sides to make the whole employment relationship continue to work well. So when you have a need, and if it's a physical need, I think you should, don't be afraid to talk about it. Find someone, if you are not comfortable, find someone that you are comfortable to talk to and seek help. Seek medical help. Don't be like me to get kicked in the ass just to go and to seek medical help to really understand what's going on. Yeah, so that would be my advice to you. And if you need to rest, don't be afraid to rest, to just ask for flexibility. Yeah. And I do think that it is okay, especially with MOM regulation now that says, when the employee asks for flexibility, the employer must respond in an appropriate manner.
Thank you so much for your time, Julie, for sharing your experience, especially on such a private and vulnerable topic. Yep. I think thank you all so much for joining the session today as well. We apologize for the technical difficulties. I think this honestly is the first time that happened to me as well. The previous virtual session went fine, so I think it was just a one-off event. So hope to see you guys in the next event that we'll be having. I think the next one will be on 8th of October on menopause and fitness. I think if you guys have joined our previous session with Dr. Jun, Dr. Arun will be the one hosting the session this time on 8th October. He'll be actually touching on what fitness has to do with midlife and menopause, how we can actually use physical training and physical activity to counteract some of the symptoms. He will also be sharing on some of the physical activities, some exercise methods that you can work. So there'll be actually a live demo session. So if you want to take part in some of the physical activities, do come dressed in exercise attire, if you will. It'll be done in the same venue at Impact at Hong Lim Park. We will be doing the demo at the level 1 gym, so it'll be a nice short little staircase up and down from the event. So yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys there. Thank you so much for your time, and this concludes the session. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for everyone for joining, and have a nice Tuesday night.